anticipated session for today evening, or I must say, the WidNet Summit 2022 is a very exciting and powerful chit chat between the two creative leaders, a creative executive at a leading OTT platform, and a well known producer he is. They have given us some of the most popular web series in the country. So I would take the pleasure and honor to invite on stage the head of content at Disney Plus, Hotstar, and HSM Entertainment Network, Disney Stars, India's Mr. Gaurav Banerjee on stage, please, with a huge round of applause. I would want to welcome him on stage. He will be joined by the adaptation company creative entrepreneur, producer, and specialist, Mr. Sunil Doshi, who I would like to welcome on stage. So, can we put our hands together for both of them? You can please have your respective seats.
It's been my great privilege to actually spend some time with Gaurav. Gaurav has been actually driving the content and storytelling for over 15 years now. He has created some iconic channels and continues to do so in context of the modern technology and of storytelling. Uh, we've always heard about actually Hotstar giving us great amount of storytellers and great amount of stories and new shows and movies and all that. Today, we will have this ample opportunity in this 20 minutes that we have with Gaurav to really find out how it works, and the man behind all the storytelling and curating and actually spotting those talents to really do with that. So, Gaurav, tell us, tell us that traditional wisdom says that creating story for television medium and creating story for the digital mediums are two different things. How have you navigated, because you straddle both the worlds, and being a leader with enormous subscriptions, the most enviable that many transnational corporations are not taking in the right spirit with the way you're going. So can you please tell us actually how do you do this?
Thank you, Sunil. You've been very generous, more generous than accurate in your introduction. But you have been a friend for a long time, so that is to be expected. So, thank you for this platform. Wonderful to be here today for VidNet. And I think, in response to your question, uh, we think of ourselves as a storytelling and content company. And when we are looking at stories, we just want to understand two or three very simple things. One is, how is this story going to be fresh and unique and interesting to ourselves first, and then hopefully for our viewers as well? And second, how might it be relevant or exciting for them? And thirdly, who is the storyteller and why is the storyteller excited and interested in telling the story? And do we like their reasons and purpose behind it as well? So I think the way we have approached this question for a very long time is essentially around this process, and haven't thought too much at the beginning phase on the distribution, because the way we've thought about streaming or linear television is that those are different ways of distributing our content. And we are always very comfortable with the idea that consumers can choose what technology, what distribution works for them best. And perhaps some format related choices are there. And therefore, some kind of storytelling will perhaps sit better only on our digital streaming platform. Some others may sit better on linear TV. And there are a bunch of things that sort of define that. But those are all sort of second order questions. So I think fundamentally, we always at Star, and Star has had a very, very rich tradition of amazing storytelling that go over about 20 years. And you were there at the foundation and start of that story. I was in college then. So I think that's a great tradition. And so I'm standing on some amazing shoulders today as I do this and as my team does this. But essentially, the big idea that we have always had in Star is that we're a storytelling company. And I think when we went into digital, we wanted to, be native to the digital world as well. And therefore, we expanded the brief of what we were as a company. And we said we are today a company of technologists and storytellers. So we went from being a company which believed in and had people from a consumer mindset and a storytelling mindset. And we expanded that to say we want to be a company with people who understand product, who understand technology, who understand engineering, and who understand storytelling. So I think that's the kind of journey that we have traversed. So I hope that sort of answers your question, Sunil.
And remember that we are having this conversation and the time, the most significant times in the recent development that has happened in the world of streaming, that with the economic models changing, global inflation that is happening, war in Ukraine, some people are gaining subscribers, some people are losing subscribers. Amidst all of this, where do you see Hotstar, as a technology company or a creative company? How do you see the way forward for this company?
So I think that's a great question, and I see Disney Plus Hotstar as both, right? We see ourselves as a content platform, which is always thinking about how do we create technology here, which is intuitive for our viewers in India today. And as we were building this platform over the last 7, 8 years, one of the most important things that we realized early in our journey is that for us to build a streaming platform at scale, we needed to have a technology that was sort of residing on mobile phones. And I think the big streaming successes that had happened in the West were much more on connected TVs at people's homes. So I think the fact that we were mobile first meant that our tech needed to be different. I think the second thing that happened is that we were a what would today be called a legacy media company that was thinking about streaming. So I think to our advantage was two things. We hopefully knew India's consumers well because we were India's biggest broadcaster, and we understood storytelling. So I think one of the first fundamentals that we arrived at is that for us to be a platform at scale, we needed to do three things really well. We needed to have a big presence on live sports. We needed to have a big presence in the movies business, and we needed to have a really big presence on drama. And therefore, our content portfolio from day one has traversed all of these three things and continues to traverse and build on that. So we want to be the platform that has the best series, that has the best movies, and that has a lot of live sport as well. Because if you look back, and I've been in TV for 22 years now, these are three big pillars of Indian television, right? These are the three big pillars of what me personally I want to watch, right? I want to take care of my own entertainment needs. I find myself spending my time across these three things, and I think that's broadly true for all of us out here. And we wanted to straddle all of this.
Gaurav, you're a man on a mission. You have dealt with all kinds of creative talent, community, now technology. You have done some enormous innovations within the company. I can name some of them, and I'm sure there are a lot more. The way the recent example of what Anupama has done, the kind of a reverse osmosis, in a manner of speaking, that a traditional television is feeding the new technology, while the new technology is complementing the linear technology and giving it to this. And you have two specific examples, that Anupama is one, and you did a prequel to a special ops in a way that was a kind of an afterthought based on the success of the show that has happened. And you so quickly turned around and got such a great organic symbiotic idea. What do you do? What does your creative team do to spot such opportunities and to extrapolate the existing opportunities that you have? The big boss in South is another one example. So could you just elucidate for people here, how does that happen? What are the processes? What are the minds working? And what is that, situation room conversation? Yeah.
Thanks, Sunil. So let me take you into the situation room for a moment. And I think, at Star, we are a pretty interesting company with a great culture, which, uh, while we have been in some ways leaders of entertainment in this country, we always try and start by thinking ourselves as challengers. So one of the big challenges that we sort of took on is that we felt there was a little bit of a caste system that was working against us. You know, we were this old media company, which is legacy TV, and streaming was, and the web world was this new, really cool world. Lots of terms and phrases and ways of working that we didn't know. We were cut off from. Not the cool kids in the room anymore. And we said, how do we crash this party, and how do we change and transform this party in a way that it also becomes our party? And I think that's what we have essentially tried to do, right? So we didn't create this ecosystem. We did not come here first. We came here much later. But when we came in here, we wanted to understand and ask some really fundamental questions and reimagine this world, right? And I think one of the first decisions that we had was that we believed that streaming can and should happen in India at scale. And therefore, the kind of content that should be made on streaming should be really high quality, but it should also be for all of India. It should not only be for niche audiences. So I think we arrived at these two really important strategic decisions. And once we had done that, I think it was kind of easy. We said, okay, we're going to put our best content on our streaming platforms. And I think one of the early decisions there was that all the linear TV shows that we have first is made available to our paying subscribers on Disney Plus Hotstar. So if you want to watch Anupama, the best way in is if you become a paying subscriber, you get to watch it at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we saw that behavior, and we saw that a lot of our fans were really doing it, and they were really wanting to watch it, and they caught up with the episode through the day and did not really want to wait till 10 p.m. to watch it on Star Plus. Now, in a traditional world, if this was being run differently, people would worry about this, right? If my bonus was linked to the rating only of Anupama on Star Plus, I'm like here doing something that's kind of bringing that rating and the number of those viewers down, right? So we sort of changed the way we incentivized creative teams and everyone in our company to say, no, we're building a great show. And as far as everyone involved in making that show, it shouldn't matter to them where consumers are watching it, right? And then we went against the caste system of streaming to say, there's a real feeling that TV and TV people and TV shows and TV producers and TV actors are in some way not good enough. I was sure I was coming from TV and have only done TV all my working life, and I'm like, where is this coming from, and why is this the way it is, right? What's wrong with us having had done TV, or actually before that, for people maybe who had done radio or who had done print, as long as what they were doing was great, was awesome, was amazing content. So I think we were very clear that this caste system we were not going to sort of participate in any way. And therefore, I think some of the shows that we're truly incredibly proud of is this Anupama spin-off prequel that we're going to launch later this month, Anupama Namaste America, which is an amazing inventive idea about what happened to Anupama. When did the first cracks in her marriage actually appear? Right, so it's a question which is interesting because when you see the show in the first episode on our TV version, she's in her mid-40s and her husband has already moved away from her. So, we wanted to sort of tell the story of, when did this start, right? When did trouble first hit paradise? So that's what is the story that we are doing on Disney Plus Hotstar later this month. And well, Big Boss is among the most popular franchises for our regional channels. It has done amazingly well, continues to be really, really strong, right? Top of the rating charts in Telugu and in Tamil. It's a very different story. Many of you here perhaps more familiar in the Hindi market, where it has ebbed quite a lot. Not the story here. Those are really, really popular shows. And again, we felt that digital-only versions with the big stars, Kamal Hassan, Nagarjuna, might be a good way to go. and both those seasons have done very well for us. So, I think consumers are telling us that the best of TV can be amazing content for streaming, right? Just as the best of films are, the best of cricket is. So I think we want to build from that. And of course, there are formats, since you mentioned Special Ops, amazing story, and told only in 4 episodes, right? So that perhaps is more, native to just digital. And we are open to that kind of an experiment as much as we are open to an Anupama or a Big Boss or a Dance Plus.
Let me ask you a little slightly different question. As a thought leader, I consider Star Television, with no bias whatsoever, as a kind of a thought leader, whether what they did in innovations in the cricket commentaries in multiple languages, in a real life situations, to Anupama that you talked about. But Disney and Star together have created so many enormous and iconic IPs. Do you see cross collateralization of those IPs traveling within the universe of Star and Disney? A, this question leads to B, is that where is the new talent who's going to deal with this creativity coming from in the near absence of television schools, film schools in our country whatsoever? So people are migrating from conventional television medium into streaming in all the platforms that they are coming. I remember the initiative, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you started a content studio way back 7, 8 years ago, and you had a training program conducted by experts coming from different parts of the world to train those 30, 40 writers every year, provide them a stipend to work with Star TV. After that initial 1 year, they could go out and exercise freedom and liberty to do what that. So I would like to tell this audience a backroom story that people are just not aware of the shows that are coming. But there is so much of madness and methods, both are in equal proportion, going behind to do what you guys are doing. So I think it would be nice for you to share some of those.
No, sure. So I think the first part, of course, we see ourselves as a IP creation company. I think that's fundamentally if we are in the storytelling business. We're in the business of creating high quality IP. And definitely Disney Star sees itself fundamentally do just that. I think if we can keep creating high quality IP, we will continue to have stories that capture the popular imagination, and the monetization of that will follow. So I think that is fundamental to who we are and what we do. And I think from Anupama to Special Ops to Arya, those are all big brands that we have created in the recent, in the last 1 or 2 years. But of course, that's a tradition and a culture that goes back 22 years, right? From Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi to Anupama and Arya is quite a journey. And I think that journey is based on the creative DNA of our company, which really believes that, we're in the business of quality storytelling first. And we are in the business of finding creative people, the best creative ideas, and jostling with them in an environment which is very healthy, right? Which is, so I think not easy, but healthy, right? So there is lots of tension, there's lots of madness, there's lots of cut and thrust every day, every meeting, almost. Very tough, right? I think because it's really hard to make a good show. There's no doubt about it. I think if people are waltzing their way to making great content, they're on another universe, and I have no access to them. So I think in my world, I must tell you, confess to you that it's a struggle. It's hard, right? And I think so because it's so hard. There must also be empathy. So we believe in a lot of creative jostling, but we believe in a lot of empathy for each other, and particularly for the writing community and the creative community, because as an executive, someone like me, yes, I'm trying to think about several stories, but for most creative teams and passionate makers, you're at the middle, at the most telling one or two, maybe 3 stories. So it's much harder, right? And you're thinking about them, and I'm reacting, or my team is reacting most often. You're creating and getting up in the morning and putting pen to paper on a blank sheet of paper, and that's incredibly difficult to do and very, very hard to do. So I think it needs, it needs a lot of discussion, a lot of pushback, um, intellectual jostling, but it requires a huge amount of empathy as well. So I think we need to be always conscious that we're doing a good job of both of those things.
Would you like to talk about the content studio that you
Yeah,
created with
sure.
your
So
idea?
actually, that's an interesting story. It goes back to when I was a student, and I wanted to go into the creative business and try and understand how to make a TV show or a film. And this was in the year 1998. I came out of college, and I discovered that there were only two places in India that of any repute that you could go to and learn how to become a filmmaker or a TV producer. So just two schools in all of India, and one of them took 15 people and the other took 18 people. So there were like 33 seats, and I could hope to get one of those 33 seats. And I pretty much figured out that this was a luck of the draw. I could be reasonably intelligent and give it a crack, but maybe I'll get one of those 33 seats, maybe I won't, right? So I just got lucky. And I realized that this is such a small number for an industry which is so big, right? So I think for several years, we kind of really struggled thinking about, how are we sort of getting new writers into the mix, and who's sort of coming through. And I think the belief that we had as broadcasters is that this is a market that will get sort of, there's a market need, and therefore people will sort of come and sort of create these institutions for us, right, to feed this market. But nothing got created, not for a very long time. I remember I went to both of these schools actually, and one of those schools, and I said, you must start a course that teaches people to write TV series, because they don't do that, right? So, so there were just two schools. One of them had no such course. So I was like, how is this industry going to get better if nobody's going to be taught how to do this, right? Learn best practices, learn from each other. Anything that you do at a great college or a good school. Just wasn't happening. So we said, okay, we're going to put together a budget and some teachers and put together a syllabus and a website and launch this, right? So, I think we put together a team and hired people and essentially I asked all my writer friends in the industry to, just come and take classes and get this going. In addition, we hired somebody to work to put together the syllabus, because it's a specialized activity. So we put this together at quite an enormous amount of cost, and I think that's why Disney Star and Star is a great company. I don't know how many other companies could I have gone to the CFO and said, okay, we're spending these few X crores, and there is no money that's going to come at the end of this, right? I can't tell you, if it's a show, and your overall track record is fine, you can get some money, you can get money going, saying, okay, revenue might come. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But at least the hope is there. With a writer's program, you're at the beginning saying, no money is immediately going to come. It's just going to set up these writers, and hopefully they become good writers. And then they'll write some great shows 2, 3, 4 years later. And guess what? They may not write those shows for Star, right? They'd go away and write those shows for Viacom or for Netflix, right? But I think that's a great thing about our company, that people said that's fine, right? And I think my pitch was, as long as the industry improves, as long as there is more writing knowledge in the industry, we will also improve. There is no way that we will not improve. So yeah, that's how we created the Star Writers program. We have, I think, had at least about 35-40 people on our rolls over the last 3 or 4 years. And yeah, it's had its share of problems, undoubtedly. But I think it's something that we're very proud of.
Gaurav is on a mission. So, metaphorically speaking, I think he would want to burn the ocean as well. So, I remember not from him or from his organization, but from the marketplace that I'm involved with all the creative community, in the manner that Disney Hotstar went about creating that show called Arya. An amazing journey went into the only Indian show which was commissioned and nominated for Emmy, got a great ratings from the audience, and I don't know the real numbers, but there is a sense of euphoria about that particular show. I know that Gaurav will not want to speak too much about all these things, but I really, in the interest of the audience here, would like to know your journey, how it felt to be nominated for Emmy. You were personally there with the creator, and how was it? And give us the once again a situation room story of how you managed to create this story, creator, Sushmita, and everyone together.
Yeah, so I think the story starts with Sunil. So we were just entering the world of streaming, and one of the filmmakers that I really, really valued and whose work I really loved was Ram Madhvani. And I remember asking Sunil if he knows Ram Madhvani well. And Sunil said, of course, Mr. Doshi is good friends with all the good creators in Bombay. So, of course, he's good friends with Ram. And he said, I will ensure that you have coffee with Ram Madhvani. So I said, well, thank you very much. And a few days later, I turned up at Mr. Madhvani's office and started on a journey to persuade him to not make Arya as a film, but make it as a TV series. And Ram has a lot is an amazing man, and he's a lot of intuitive faith in people, and he definitely shared that with me. And I think we started at that moment. And when the Emmy nomination came, I must tell you that my first reaction was, this is a false news. This hasn't happened to us. Because remember, I saw myself and all of us as the crusaders from the outside who didn't really belong into the main party. We were the Johnny come lately, the people from the TV world. How is it that we became this first streamer in India to have got this nomination? Because frankly, it seemed unbelievable. And also our brief always, and even today very strongly, is the best awards that we want are the reward and love of our fans. So we don't count them, we do nothing to try and get awards, like absolutely never done anything. And here it was, right? And I remember calling Ram and asking him, saying it looks fine, lots of news wire saying that it is the official Emmy award. And he said, yeah, don't worry. I've been to the website. It's the real deal. So I think that was, it was a bolt from the blue. We're deeply, deeply grateful because frankly, there's so many good shows being made in India. But I think for the Emmy jury to have sort of recognized Arya is great, recognition for Ram and for Sushmita and an amazingly talented team. I think the craft, the effort, the passion that team showed is just next order brilliant. And it's just incredible that it's got the attention that it has got, in addition to all the fan love that a lot of people have given it.
While you were just enjoying the glorious moments of Arya being nominated, and you guys all went there came Ormax rating, right? You have 9 out of 15 shows. That's absurd. And at that point of time, I did not want to believe that. And I did my checking. How is that possible that 9 out of 15? What are the shows and what explains that? Is it a Maratha Mandir versus a small multiplex of 22 seaters amongst your competitor? Are we talking that? That every show that you guys do have a vast thing, ending up to what, 48 million subscribers today and continues to grow. So can you just throw some light on that?
Well, I think on how it is that you'll have to ask or Max. They did the poll. But it was good to see that. It was really really good to see that because it showed that some of the fundamentals that we were putting into place were perhaps from a consumer point of view right. So I think when we look at when we started on this journey, one of the first principles for us was care about the right story and do not care about distribution when you're thinking about the story. And I think we've created a culture there today that on linear TV, in any given week right now, most weeks we have 5 or 6 of the top 10 shows. And therefore, our intent was that, can we really get that on streaming as well? And when we thought about that in the beginning, we said, yes, that's our ambition. That's who we want to be. And that seemed a little bit hard because we were not, when we started, the shiniest brand. We were starting later. Other people were spending more money. So we had some challenges, but I think we counted on just two things. One, that we hopefully, because of our strong TV background, we knew the Indian consumer well. As a company, as a core team, we hopefully understood what India wants to watch. So we will ideally, therefore, perhaps choose better themes and better shows. And second, that we had a way of working with creatives which was much more organic, and we had collective experience of having done that sort of very well over a very vast range of shows. So I think those two things have served us well. 9 out of 15 is just amazing credit to incredibly talented team that I have the absolute delight of leading, and it's their shows. So I think yeah, it's come together really really well. We're proud of it.
So, Gaurav, while having talked about a lot of inner world of Hotstar Disney, how the content is created, I want to get some insights for you on the way forward, on the future of streaming and all that. What would you consider Hotstar as a creator first company or an audience first company?
At the cross section of both. So, as a company that's thinking very hard about listening to consumers and also really accessible to creators and also to first time creators, people who don't yet have a very big name but have a great and very innovative, inventive story to tell. So ideally, we'd want both those things. But I think there is something that we certainly need, and I think that's nothing to do with my company and everything to do with all of you and all of us as an industry together. I think we have to sort of be able to tell stories that travel the world. And I think we are sort of increasingly beginning to see that. You mentioned RRR when we were having coffee. Today, I was delighted to see that there is a Manchester United meme on KGF, and that's quite amazing, right? So I think the fact that we can be part of the global cultural fabric is being demonstrated in a really big way with amazing creativity from different parts of this country. And I think it's been a long time coming, and I think that's what we have to sort of really work together to create. How is it that the quality of our stories is so good that the whole world sits up and takes notice? Today there is no doubt that Hollywood is not the only creative engine in the world, right? There's an amazing creative engine in Korea. There's an amazing creative engine in Japan. So why not India, right? And I think that's the ambition that all of us must have, should have, and anything that's sort of not doing that is kind of falling short, kind of wasting a shot. And I think that's where our ambition should be, all of us together.
How do you see the future now? As you know, that we are veering more and more towards the conventional way of thinking. Traditional economic models are pushing us towards that. Some of the other competitors and affluent streamers are actually wanting to do a slow release of their episodes, not too many shows in a year to be done, because you don't want to get lost like a food bazaar and 44,000 shows and you don't know where you are after a week or two. What would be Hotstar strategy going future with respect to, would you think at one point of time binge watching was a revolution, but now slowly, as you see, many streamers are releasing episodes slow on a weekly basis for customers retention and engagement on a longer period of time. Have you had any thoughts on this?
So, Sunil, I think we're the first streamer at scale in India in many ways for curated content, and therefore this market is literally something that is getting created now. So therefore, I don't believe that we have very many set formats that we need to tie ourselves down to today. I think they might emerge, and they will sort of keep emerging and changing, and therefore we need to be kind of flexible around it, and learn through a lot of experimentation. So I think the one thing that we are like deeply committed to is, we ask this question a lot, is, what are the experiments that we are running this quarter, right? And what are the experiments that we're going to run next quarter? And then we learn from that, right? And we'll knock off a lot of stuff. Will not work, right? That's part of creation of a new world. And therefore, we don't know, I think, in the world of TV, right, that there is a lot of knowledge that we have on formats, right? Because those formats have been built over 20-22 years, or even longer than that. But in the digital space, that learning is very new, right? Because the even the learning that exists, let's say, from outside of India, is so different because of the simple fact that here it is, the viewing is on mobile. So we are creating a high quality curated entertainment brand which is mobile first at scale. Right now, that kind of thing doesn't exist anywhere else, right? So whatever we learn, whatever we do, only we are doing, only we are learning, and we need to sort of figure out where to take that next. So just two formats that we have recently done. When we took Big Boss and made it digital only, right, the 24/7 feed became a really important and interesting experiment that we ran, right? On Anupama, the big learning was that we want to create a Hotstar show, but we also want to run the Star Plus show. So can the same team, simultaneously run two shows, right? So how do we sort of build capacity to create that without really making life miserable for all the content creative people involved? So we've sort of thinking through experiments on how we can sort of curate content, how can we can create content, what can we do on our app. All of those things are kind of changing, becoming new, inventive in different ways.
Recent study by a management school, a top management school in the country, says that today Hindi shows viewing is on the decline compared to the regional languages, and there is a rise of unscripted show watch time as compared to the scripted. What is your personal experience to counter this particular findings?
No, I mean, I think there is so much headroom to grow in India. India is like really, waking up and full of opportunities. So there is amazing growth ahead of us in Hindi and in all regional languages as well. So I think we are really bullish that Hindi consumption is set to grow, and will grow at a rapid pace. And of course, within Hindi, the old world of HSM, I think, is a little lazy, because there are lots of other languages of importance within North India as well, and they deserve to be given importance, including your mother tongue, Gujarati, right? So I think, why should there not be a lot of high quality Gujarati content, right? And Punjabi content and Bhojpuri content. So I think we're going to see within North India also a lot of other languages getting a lot of importance over the next few years, and that will explode further. I think the second thing that must happen, which will take up consumption, is that the economic development in parts of northern India, right, needs to really show an amazing amount of growth, and that will reflect in people having more leisure time, and therefore watching more content. So I think, if you look at the regional languages, particularly down south, right, that has already kind of peaked. but there is massive growth ahead of us in many parts of Madhya Bharat, which is where I am from. Ignore the Bengali surname. I think that's again something that is a great opportunity for further growth to happen. And I think down south, particularly in Telugu and in Tamil and Kannada, we are seeing massively ambitious creative people taking big risks. And I think that is getting paid off in a big way. And that's something which is, something new in India. Hasn't happened that much, right? We haven't had as much of a culture of startups, entrepreneurship in this country as we would have loved to have, right? I think we're beginning to see that. And I think we're beginning to see some major, inroads of that in the entertainment industry, right? I think, somebody called Prashant Neel comes and makes a film like KGF, right? The previous work isn't the criteria for the next work, right? You don't need to be a big name. You don't need to have made, five great films before that, to have now made perhaps the greatest Indian film of all time on box office. So I think that's a incredibly inspiring story for everybody out there. Who knows who's the next person with a great script, amazing idea, and 100 crores to invest behind it, could be building the next universe that could be massive. And today it has happened from Kannada. Tomorrow it could happen from Gujarati, and day after it could happen from Punjabi. So I think we're looking at a lot of excitement ahead.
Before we give an opportunity to audience to actually ask the question directly to you, this is my last question to you. Do you think that digital streaming technology has made languages irrelevant as far as viewing habits of the audience is concerned?
Yeah, I think so. And I think some part of it has started with streaming technology, and we saw that as shows sort of began traveling the globe. And we saw that with Parasite winning the Oscar. And I think the director's quote was fantastic, right? That you just had to overcome the fear of that subtitle, and a whole world of stories truly emerges for you. And I think that certainly has happened all over the world, including in India, and streaming has played a massively important role in that. We have seen that on Disney Plus Hotstar as well. One of our most watched shows is a show called November Story, which we originally shot in Tamil, right? And the Hindi dubbed views of that is literally half, or maybe a little more than half, the viewership of the show. So I think we're sort of certainly seeing that, and it is great because it just means that a national platform for talent is getting created, right? It doesn't matter where your story starts, in which language you shoot. It's going to get watched all over the country if it's a good story.
And the last question, I'm sorry, that have you ever a thought of creating a scripted format of the shows that you are originals that you are creating, and do you have any thoughts on the way we are getting a lot of scripted formats in India for adapted to be in Indian languages and all that? Have you ever thought of forming a cell, or it already exists, I don't know, within Disney Hotstar system that could be November Story, it could be Special Ops, or it could be Coffee with Karan, any of these shows that is there a cell which create a scripted format to be sold outside, and once again a reverse of that export of the format from India would happen?
No, that's a great question. But I think we're thinking of it slightly differently and consistent with the first question, the earlier question that you had asked, that we would want actually the original show in the original language to go global. So, ideally, we don't want to sell the format of Arya to, let's say, Mexico or the United States. We would want those viewers to watch Arya with subtitles, right? Ideally, and that's our dream state. We want to be able to creating great stories in India that travel across the world, just like you and I saw Squid Game, right? No one needed to buy a format of Squid Game for me to watch Squid Game. So I think that's the world that is perhaps now emerging, and it's a very different world from the earlier world where formats were important, right? And I think we have used formats at Hotstar to learn how to create big event series, right? I think Rudra itself is a great example, right? We got the format of Luther to learn, to understand how do you create a series in 6 episodes. Because frankly, when we started work on that, no such series had been made by Star or by any other broadcaster or platform before that. So how do you do something that no one in your market has ever done before? So you borrow and you study and you learn. So we did that in phase 1, but this is phase 2.
Thank you, Gaurav, for such an insightful conversation and privilege to have that. I now throw this forum to the audience. Here is Gaurav Banerjee. You may not be able to access him because of his preoccupation with work, but here he is to ask any question that you may want to have direct one-to-one. I leave this forum open, please. Anil.
Hello, I am Hitendra Parmar, and I want to first congratulate you for the wonderful series of Arya. I love both the season, and I'm just a emerging writer, and I want to send some pitch. Can I send directly to you, or is it a different medium?
So, firstly, thank you so much for liking our show. We have a full process around it, and when this talk is over, I'll come and explain that to you. So it's complicated because there are lots and lots of legal formalities that we as a platform need to take care of to protect our interests and protect your interests. So I'll talk to you about it.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the question first. All of you all who want to know about the pitching process, we'll get back to you on that because I don't think Gaurav can explain that to you now, as of now, unless he wants to. You have an ID where people can send in their pitches, right?
No.
Okay.
So I wish it was that easy, right? And I'd love to make it that easy, but this is legally very, very difficult or impossible to do. So we have a set form that needs to be sent to you. You need to look at it, be fine with it, send it back, and then my legal folks need to look at it, and that's when the idea can come. So I think the only thing to do is to write to Star and say that you want to pitch, and then wait to get this form and fill it. So it's a bit technical. It's a slightly difficult thing to do, but it's the only thing that keeps IP secure.
These processes have come in after Disney coming into the picture also.
No, let's not.
It's been there before
No,
also.
no, it's been there before,
Okay.
and it has nothing to do with Disney. It has everything to do with actually trying to protect rights of individual creators and also the company, right? Because people have we receive pitches from every part of this country in every language. And often there is lots of overlap in ideas, not because people are trying to steal each other's ideas, but because we are all part of the same world and the same stimulus hits all of us, right, in different ways. So, how do you sort of do this in a way which is extremely ethical and yet straightforward? So that's what we're trying to balance, right? We want it to be ethical, we need it to be safe, and we want it to be straightforward too. And those two things are sometimes at odds. So, yeah.
Now my question to you. So, you talked about Indian shows traveling globally. You'd like to see an aria being watched in that language in that region. Co-productions is something international, and Indian and international co-productions is something that we haven't really explored on television to that extent. What's your perspective on that? That's one. And that could help shows travel a lot more, apart from getting local subsidies from different countries, either for the music or for writers or for locations, etc. That's one. That's one question. What's your perspective on that? Working with international co-producers, writers, stroke creators. And secondly, also, where is the talent, the production? What's happened in the first wave, all known film producers were drawn into making shows by the OTT platforms. In the second phase, there's been a little bit more liberalization. What do we see happening going forward in terms of new creators coming, new producers coming, and what role will Hotstar play in that?
No, I think both the questions are great. I think we're open to the idea of co-productions, of course, as long as it's very clear what are the sort of unique skill sets, talent that each side is bringing to the table, right? So I think as long as that's clear, we're good to sort of consider them. But honestly, I think the first questions that we ask are, whenever we look at a story, is saying, okay, will it work in its home market or not, right? Because it's very hard for me to think about saying what will work in Mexico or in Spain, except that my understanding and having worked in India across many languages and regional markets is that if it's a good story, it's likely to travel markets, right? And I have seen this in my career with a lot of Bengali stories and a lot of Marathi stories and a lot of Tamil stories. Every day we see this. So I think we are asking the same fundamental question. So, and I think if that answer is good, we're sort of good to go, right? Sorry, what was your second question?
So, you have shows like Mata Hari, which was an international production between 4 different countries. Funding came from 4 different countries, made at a scale. So, the question is, we Indian, the platforms and the broadcasters haven't had that. They're looking so much at the domestic market that they're not exploring the global diaspora, not just Indian, but even global audiences. That's why they've not gone beyond that to look at global co-production. Then ITV will not produce it alone, and ITV will get funding from, let's say, a Canal Plus or from a TFR or from different, and they'll put a show, which then and BBC will come in, and that will travel the world. So we haven't ever gone in that route. So you, as being a pioneer, Star India has been a pioneer in many ways. What's your perspective on that? And my second question was, in the first phase, recognized film
Producers, yes.
Yeah.
So-
So I still haven't got the answer to the first one.
Yeah, so I'm a little ambivalent on the first one, right? Because honestly, we don't struggle with resourcing a good story, right? So I think if there is a really, really good story and it needs a certain amount of budget, we'll be able to resource it for sure, right? And I think that's true about the India market in general, right? So money for creativity is not an India problem at all, right? So I think there are so many examples of this, but let's go with the current one, right? I think both KGF 2 and RRR were made at phenomenal budgets, right? And it was very easy to raise that money. Since I'm a participant in one of those two films, I can tell you that. So I think, if we have a great creative idea, funding it is not a problem in India, right? Not at all.
It's not the case internationally either, if there's a great idea.
That's
Yet
right.
people come together with different skill sets, different strengths, and they come together to make it a global success.
But these are global successes, right? Because what is happening now also is that the global content distribution is kind of, on one platform, right? Because the platforms of distribution themselves are global, right? So, if it's, let's say, a Disney show, it's a Disney show all over the world, right? Equally true for Amazon or Netflix. So, I think that becomes somewhat problematic, right? So if it's a great Disney story, I would like it to be on every Disney platform all over the world, right? So I think those two things make this platform participation, etc., somewhat difficult. It was possible and the right thing to do when distribution was fragmented, right? And resourcing big stories was hard, right? So let's say anything costs 100 crores, and people are sort of reluctant to put that 100 crores, and it's much better, let's say, if you're only putting out 25 crores, right? But what if that's not a problem, right? Putting that 100 crores is okay to do. And secondly, that world works when you say, okay, you know what, in Europe this would be on Canal, and in the America it would be on ABC, and then when it comes to Asia it could be on Star, right? You could have done a deal like that, but that world has kind of gone away, right? So it's
Still happening. You could make a Taj Mahal, for instance, which could travel the world. And sorry if I'm dragging this subject.
but
because
why
I'm
do
being
it?
pushed.
Why do it across platforms? Is the only question, right? Yes, make Taj Mahal and put it on whatever your platform is.
Yeah, but you get the story. We still are missing on certain storytelling, scripting fundamentals in India. We still are missing, which you may not agree. I still believe we have to go
We are-
some distance in
We have to
scripting.
learn. We have to. So if there is some learning to be done, we must do it rapidly.
Okay.
Right.
So your view is that international co-productions can happen only if it's a great idea which can involve various countries rather than just within India?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need it.
We
Is
don't need international co-production. Okay, second is on the
Yes,
talent.
that's a great question on talent, right? So I think uh, we're beginning to see that for sure, and I think in the early phase, yes, there are a lot of filmmaking talent that has come in. I think next phase we're seeing a lot of TV talent coming in as well, and I think what will fundamentally happen is a lot of people will come in who are going to be native to digital, right? And I think we saw that with November Story. That's just a terrific show that's native to digital, right? And I think we're very confident that we will continuously see more such storylines, right? So yeah, I'm really confident, and these are very early days. I think just about 3 years. So this is in its infancy, but what we are much more likely to see is a new generation, which is sort of digital first in its thinking, and that's fundamentally different, right? Because for example, episode durations are less relevant in this world, as just one of the ways in which this world is different, right? So the audience set that you can cater to can be a far more targeted, right? And therefore a deeper, more immersive experience is possible. And we are in the early phase of AR and VR, and that's going to rapidly change how people think about storytelling. So I think we're going to see people who are sort of going to be native to this world, right? Who are born in it, people like my son, uh, right? So born in it, living in it, only experiencing that world is the emerging world.
So two contradictions. The legacy one, which is television, you talked about digital, and we're talking about the new emerging storytelling in the metaverse world. That's going to be,
Yeah.
two
I
different.
think we'll leave it to some open other questions
Yeah,
because
okay,
they will
yeah,
not
yeah.
get Gaurav
Uh,
otherwise.
hi, 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 Gaurav. Hi, Sunil. I have a question here. This is Shashank from Mirchi. So, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Hi.
So, basically, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. First of all, I didn't hear a word about data and all because that is the most common thing which we hear from the OTT players. Uh, I want to ask that when we talk about the TV medium, and you guys have been operating in both TV and now shifting to OTT, in TV the feedback loop used to be very sharp, right? You used to have TRP numbers coming in every week and all of that. So you can change the trajectory of your storyline and do it as per the audience. When you talk about OTTs and we engage with OTTs, they mostly talk about data and how they have a certain amount of data to know what their audience knows. But logically, if you see, let's say, a series releasing today, and you want to tweak your content as per that, you will take another 1.5 years to create a similar kind of content. And by then, the audience taste might have changed completely. So my question is, do you think that the data, I'm using the word data, is a bit overrated and eventually it is an intuitive call which people take and they justify it with data? That is my question number one. And the second is, if the data thing is actually logical and everybody is trying to find that formula where a certain kind of genre, a certain kind of story will work, then do you see that though OTTs are trying to have diverse set of stories, but in trying to achieve that scale and trying to monetize their platform, there will be homogeneity in the kind of stories that will be told eventually by the platforms because they are trying to attain numbers and trying to crack that formula. That is the second question. Third is, in your
No,
case,
listen, we can't. The
Sorry.
others are there, so
It's really hard to keep
Yeah.
track of so many
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
also.
Listen, right.
So, firstly, thank you for appreciating the fact that Sunil and I kept away from data. He doesn't know my data, and I don't like talking about it, so it was easy to do. But I think, look, it's really hard to look at TRP charts and write stories. It's so hard that everybody tries to do this all the time, and most times we don't get the ratings that people want, right? So as I have sort of grown in my TV experience, I am more and more cautious that we should not be doing this, right? So I think, yes, the direction that you were taking in your question, I kind of agree with that. You can overdo this, and if you overdo this, data obsession, it can actually be really harmful, right? So that's the first thing. Second, I think you know fundamentally great creativity is about understanding the popular sentiment and being able to do something fresh and unique with it, right? And you need to have the talent and the team to be able to really do that, right? So that's what the business is. I don't at all believe that the business is on, peeling layers of data, and that's sort of, directly leading to storytelling changes. I think that's a very simplistic view. It's wrong. It doesn't lead to great results, right? And sometimes mediocre talent tries to do that, right? So I think, you should not, right? So my advice to anybody is that that's a little bit of a trap and a little bit of a waste of time, and likely to result in, in poor results, right? I think the better results are to constantly be thinking about, and learning and understanding sort of what is concerning people in general, right? And what's top of the mind concern, right? I think in some ways, a big blockbuster like KGF talks about that, right? And you have to sort of anticipate that and know that, and talk to that, right? So to my mind, that's what, I tell myself, or I tell my creative team, to constantly be thinking about. You don't want to be looking at data and figuring out what to do on a creative direction on a story. But is data helpful? Yes, right? Because it helps you map that consumer mindset, right? Today, we're talking about these big films because we have the data for them, right? That so many number of people have paid amazingly high ticket prices to go and watch them, right? So that data is useful. It's important. It's telling you to understand the national trend in some way, right?
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so you mentioned teaching people how to write well for these platforms. Are you still able to sustain those courses? Are they still available?
No, not at the moment. We're on a break right now.
Oh.
COVID, made it really hard to sort of run classrooms, physical
Okay,
teaching,
so I'm just
etc.
putting a thought out there because the print media has collapsed during the pandemic. I am one of those casualties. I was at Hello Magazine. So I have an amazing exposure, but I do not know how to hone my skills now for fiction, for Netflix, and those. And I've got novels to send out. But
Sure.
you made it seem very difficult to even pitch something.
It's not difficult, but it's not as simple as just writing an email on on an ID. So yeah, I think that what you're saying is exactly right, and we're kind of open to that. And honestly, I think the world is kind of changing quite a lot, right? So when we thought about that, what Sunil mentioned, that was in 2015, if I remember correctly. So in the last 7-8 years, the market has really opened up, and one of those two great centers that I was talking about, actually just after we started this course, did start their own course. This is FTII, and they were sweet enough to invite me, to sort of get it going. So I think the world is opening up, and therefore these opportunities, I think, will come through. And here is my advice for everyone trying to sort of knock on the doors of the big streamers. Make the big streamers knock on your door, okay? And they're all waiting and totally excited to do that.
But how does
I'm telling you how. Yes. So I'll tell you through a story, right? So these days, Star Plus is doing damn well, but only 2.5 years ago, we were really struggling, and we had become number two, and none of our shows had kind of worked for a year before that, a year and a half, and that's fine. Happens, right? You don't hit every ball out of the park. So what did we do? What did Star Plus do? We scanned every regional market to say who is doing good work in regional, right? We can't seem to figure out who's doing great work in Hindi TV, right? We are not. We know that. Our competitors are also not, right? We know that as well, right? But in regional, great work, good work is happening, right? So we actually found stories and script writers in regional and said, this is really high quality work. We want to do this in Hindi, right? And that's how Anupama started, right? It's actually originally an amazing Bengali show called Shrimoy, right? We watched that show, we loved it, and we said, we're going to make this in Hindi. And we really hope that this is going to work. And it did, right? Shrimoy and Anupama is the only show in Hindi in the last 6 years to have breached the 4 TVR marker, right? 4 TVR is humongously difficult to get to, right? So that's the way, right? So I think, this is it's a long, short way to say, you'll send an email, somebody like me will read it, will fall off my chair and call you and say, come and work this thing, right? Can happen, but tough. But what happens regularly is what I just told you about Shrimoy, right? And this writer and that writing team now is like the toast of all of Hindi TV, right? As they should be, right? So, equally true about the
We're
people.
all from the big environment of the city. We all write in English.
No.
So
So
this
how does it,
book taking-
how does it matter? So I'll give you another example, right? I think that there are amazing books which are novels which are written in English, right? Which I have bought the rights of to make to series, right? Why? Because those books were good, right? And they did well. They were reviewed well, and many of them sold damn well. So I think instead of sort of going to the platform, my advice to you and to everyone in the room, and there were some people there, is right, get the platform to come to you, right? Because when the platform comes to you, right, they're going to be so much more respectful, right? Because they are essentially coming to you because they respect and value your work, right? So I think, and everyone, and I think good corporations and good executive teams are always hungry and wanting to do this work, right? So and I think it's very hard. I think I'll give you my own example. I think it's really really hard to start at the top, right? I think nobody does that, right? When you go to play for Team India, you don't debut and start playing for Team India, right? Even the great Sachin Tendulkar did not do that, right? You play for your school, and then you play for your college. He didn't have to do that, but he's a once in a generation prodigy. But and you play Ranji Trophy, and you play age grouped cricket, and then you hopefully get a shot at playing for India, right? So I think those opportunities are amazing, and they're there in a really big way. And people like me and my teams are looking at those places like crazy. It's like in the IPL right now, right? The one of the toasts of the season, right? So many, but are all players that I had, and I'm a cricket fanatic. I hadn't heard of them before this IPL started, right? There's a young batsman called Badoni, and there's another guy called Manohar, and there is this Usman Malik who bowls faster than any Indian bowler that I have seen bowl in all my years of watching cricket. And all of these people I hadn't heard of, till 2 weeks ago. But there were scouts, and those scouts were at all of these cricket tournaments everywhere, right? And they picked up these guys and they gave them contracts. And here they are, right? The world is watching their talent. And I think, I always encourage my teams to be like those scouts, right? So we want to be reading what's working in literature. We want to be seeing what's working on regional. We want to understand what's working on in regional films, right? And things will get picked up, right? So there's a wonderful, really nice, beautiful, small budget Malayalam film called Hridayam that we have on our platform, right? It did really well, and now we're going to tell that same story in Hindi, right? As a big film. So who are these people, and did we know them 5 months ago? No. Is there a big budget that they put this film together on? Absolutely not. But did they tell a really inventive, beautiful story that captivated viewers? Yes. Right. So I think the opportunity is in India is now massive, right? And I think your time should not be spent in trying to knock down the doors, right? It should be in creating outstanding product. And there are so many opportunities of doing that. And then everyone will be at your door.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Suhela. I've been part of the two incredible teams that made Special Ops and Arya.
So thank you, Sohela.
Yeah. My question is, we were talking about languages. What about Indian films in English? What kind of a market do they have? They surely will be global, but will they be accepted globally? Because ours is a very particular brand of English. And the other thing is, what is the genre that is working today? Is it crime? Is it family? I mean, if you want to write, what should we keep in mind before we write and approach the platforms?
So I think great questions. So all kinds of English is actually acceptable everywhere, right? As the first part, and frankly, any language is acceptable as well as Lupin and Squid Game and so many Parasite have shown to us. So I think language is absolutely no barrier, right? I think an innovative, really interesting story which is deeply insightful can and will work, no doubt about it. And I think, I mean, if you were to think about an English film made out of India, there are two amazing examples, right? It's already happened. Gandhi and Slumdog Millionaire, right? Both won the Oscar. And these are essentially Indian films made in English, right? So I think there is amazing opportunity to be able to totally do this, right? On your question on genre, any genre. Okay. So because consumers, just think about yourself, or I'll talk to you about myself. Am I really that interested in a genre? Maybe not, right? I think, and that's what our data is telling us, that consumers are actually much more interested to watch across genres, right? The same people, right, watch crime thrillers and comedies and action films, right? Who's going today to the movies to watch RRR, and what genre is it? I don't know, right? But everyone's going. So I think people don't really care for genres, right? I think as an artist, as a writer, you can say, I specialize in this genre. I know how to write this. Possible, right? Certainly, Agatha Christie decided only to write murder mysteries, and she got them right, right? And I think that's true about a bunch of writers. I think the world of Excel entertainment seems to really excel in telling stories about friendship and bonding, right, around friends. Great, right? Is there a market for that? Yes, right? For 20 years, we have seen that. So I think creative people, perhaps in my experience, have genres that they really, really do get, right? So Neeraj Pandey, right? He gets, crime thrillers and spy thrillers really well, no doubt about it, right? I mean, look at the body of work, including special ops. So I think, that expertise is perhaps around creators, much more than it is around what people want to watch. People are happy to watch anything high quality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Why don't you, as Disney, have a contest or a pitch fest where the writers can sign whatever you want to sign and we can pitch our stuff?
Okay, we'll think about that. Thank you.
As you mentioned earlier about Squid Games, the writer of the Squid Game struggled 10 years to sell that script. Nowadays, in our industry, OTT, producers are choosing script from adaptation and remake. But do you believe that that's why the original ideas are not getting chance, or do you believe that the writers who have original ideas are struggling to get chance because of this?
Yes, it could be a problem, and you are right. But I think a lot of you know opening up is about to happen, and my suggestion and advice is not to give up so soon, right? The entire world of series and streaming is only 3 years old, right? So as I was explaining earlier, if I am literally that person, right? I needed to build a series. Now how do I sort of build a series? I don't know how to make a series of 8 episodes. You don't know how to make an 8 episode series. Now how do you and I get together and make this 8 episode series, right? It's very, very hard. It's possible to do, but it's hard to do, right? So the simpler thing to do is to say, okay, here is a format, what Sunil mentioned, and we literally did that with criminal justice, saying this format exists, is really good, the touch points are there, the characterization gets done quickly. Let's figure out and make a go at it, right? But also at the same time, I don't think it's totally fair to say that the platforms are not agreeing to do totally original stuff. I mentioned she was part of Special Ops, right? Original series, right? Made by a very high quality creative team, right? So whether it is a Special Ops or a November Story and many other shows that we have done, or Grahan or other platforms have done. So there is a lot of such work certainly taking place in India, which is great. Yes, there are remakes, and formats getting adapted, which perhaps also happens because people sort of lose confidence, and executives, people like myself, lose confidence if our writing frameworks sort of keep failing, right? So I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg, right? You can keep thinking, saying the platform and the producer is being risk averse. Yes, he is being, but it is also because of written material not working, and therefore making this person risk averse, right? Everybody ideally wants to make November Story and Special Ops and RRR, right? That's what you ideally want to do. If you believe that you can't do that for ABC reasons, that's why you're doing other work.
Last question, please. Yeah.
Hi, this is Tarun Chopra. I'm an independent writer and director. My question is very simple. Would you be open to reviewing as a company, as an OTT platform, to reviewing pilot episodes versus a pitch Bible?
Yes, absolutely. We do that. Yeah.
Thanks.
We talked about digital, Hotstar. What about television? We've forgotten television. I know this is about Vidnet. It's about OTT, but television is the mainstay in India still today. And secondly, the future, which is entertainment in the metaverse, in Web 3.0. What's your perspective with NFTs and all of that?
No, so that's a great question. I think TV has a lot of headroom for growth in India. And we certainly see that, and we believe in that, right? If you think about it, and I mentioned this earlier, if you look at total pay TV availability in India, particularly in North India, right, those numbers can and must move up in a massive way. So I think we need to do a bunch of things to make that movement happen, right? One part of it is in the industry's hands. The other part of it is in the general economic development of our nation, right? So I think what we need to do is we need to constantly be thinking about innovation. And I think we are sort of, sometimes as an industry, we sort of tend to become more conservative in TV. And we need to be, mindful that we don't do that. So I think TV needs constant reinvention and innovation to be able to grow, and it has lots of headroom to grow. I think one of the kind of challenges that we have is that, how do we appeal to the young, right? Those who are sort of coming into the entertainment ecosystem today. And I think they will only be excited if we do things which are fresh and new, right? And exciting. And I think some of that product we need to, design uh, in that direction, right? So I think I'm being a little critical as someone watching out for its continued growth and relevance, because there is no reason to believe that it can't be so, right? There is actually massive reason to believe that it has to be so. It should be in that direction, right? So I think there is a need and a reason and an opportunity to sort of commit to innovation and quality. And I think players that do that will continue to do really well, right? So I think if I look at TV ratings in Hindi, we have certainly seen that happen with Star Plus in the last 2 years, right? It's gone a different direction to other channels. And I think honestly, because we've been ahead on the innovation and quality curve, particularly on the quality curve. So I think that's one. On the metaverse, of course. I mean, I think every company uh, which is thinking about IP is thinking about this. Um, it's set to happen. It's in its early days of thinking, but it will percolate into stories. It will become about how we're thinking about building worlds, and that world building will become critical to how films are written and how TV shows are written. So if you don't have a world that people want to go into, you no longer have a great storyline. And I think that's a little bit of a fundamental in any case, but will become even more so. And I think a lot of merging of sort of technology to conceptualize is I think the immediate next step that we are already doing today, which we were not doing, let's say, 3 years ago.
Thank you very much, everybody. I, Sunil Doshi, along with Gaurav, wishes to thank Mishal Vanwari, IndianTelevision.com team, with Next Summit 2022 team. Yeah, with Net, sorry. and all of you to wonderfully organize this and give us this a good room for us to extrapolate our time to have this man with the privilege to have been in conversation with. Thank you, everybody, and especially thank you, Gaurav. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you so much.